The Galactic Council chambers aboard Station Zenith 7 hummed with the usual sounds of bureaucracy. 14 different species sat in their designated sections, discussing trade routes and agricultural regulations with the kind of enthusiasm normally reserved for watching paint dry. The atmosphere was perfectly controlled, 18 degrees, low gravity at 0.7 standard, and air composition balanced for maximum comfort across multiple respiratory systems. It was Tuesday, or at least the galactic equivalent of it, and nothing interesting had happened in months. Then the main doors opened. A human walked in. Ambassador James Walker stepped through the entrance wearing what his species considered formal attire, a dark blue suit, white shirt, and a strip of decorative fabric around his neck called a tie. He carried no equipment. No environmental suit protected him from the alien atmosphere. No breathing apparatus helped him process the air. No gravity compensators supported his frame. He simply walked in as if entering a room back on Earth. The sensors noticed him immediately. Temperature alarms began flashing across multiple screens. The human's body radiated heat like a small furnace, 37 degrees Celsius. In the carefully controlled environment where most species operated comfortably at 18 degrees, James Walker stood out like a thermal beacon. Counselor Threen of the Pacifan Collective was the first to notice. Its elongated form stiffened, sensory organs focusing on the newcomer with growing alarm. Within seconds, the entire chamber became aware of the intrusion. The Vrelnian delegate's 3 eye stalks retracted into its protective shell with a sharp snap. It had survived 2 wars and a planetary disaster, but the sight of an unprotected human standing in open atmosphere triggered every survival instinct it possessed. The crystalline Shadari representative, usually displaying calm blue luminescence, shifted to warning red. Patterns of distress rippled across its translucent surface like waves. Chairman Vel'Thuz, a methane-breathing Quillian, observed from within his reinforced environmental pod. His species couldn't survive in oxygen-rich environments, so he experienced the galaxy through sensors and cameras. Those sensors were now screaming warnings directly into his consciousness. His primary manipulator arm moved to the emergency control panel. The main computer system ran automatic analysis on the intruder. Data flooded every screen in the chamber, each piece of information more alarming than the last. James Walker stood patiently just inside the doorway, aware of the commotion but maintaining his calm demeanor. He had expected this reaction. Earth's briefing had prepared him for it. Still, seeing 14 different species all exhibiting their particular versions of terror was somewhat disconcerting. 10 seconds after he entered the chamber, ceiling panels opened with a mechanical hiss. 6 security drones dropped into the room, weapons charging with an ominous whine. They surrounded the human, targeting systems locked onto his position. Red laser sights painted dots across his chest. James raised his hands slowly, palms facing outward, the universal human gesture of peaceful intent, though he knew most species present wouldn't recognize it. He kept his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance," he said clearly. His voice carried across the chamber with surprising volume. Several delegates actually flinched. Human vocal cords produce sound waves at intensities most species reserved for emergency distress calls. James wasn't shouting. This was his normal speaking voice. Earth was told this was an open session, he continued, standing perfectly still as the drones hovered menacingly around him. "My name is Ambassador James Walker. I'm here representing humanity to formally request Earth's admission to the Galactic Council." Chairman Vel'Thuz's translator device crackled to life. His words emerged in flat, emotionless synthetic tones that somehow still conveyed urgency. Security Protocol Alpha 7 is in effect. Unidentified biological entity, you are in violation of atmospheric contamination standards, thermal regulations, and unauthorized entry protocols. You will remain completely motionless while a comprehensive hazard assessment is conducted. James nodded once, slowly. "I understand, Chairman. I'll cooperate fully with any procedures necessary." The chamber's artificial intelligence system completed its initial scan. Every display screen in the room simultaneously updated with the results. What the delegates read made the earlier alarm seem insignificant. Biohazard warning, critical threat detected. The human's body contained concentrated hydrochloric acid in what he called a stomach. His internal temperature of 37 degrees would literally cook the foods of 6 species present. His body carried approximately 40 trillion microorganisms, a number so vast that several delegates had to check the translation for errors. He required an atmosphere of 21% oxygen. Most civilized species considered anything above 5% dangerously high. At 21%, organic materials became frighteningly flammable. The human was walking around in what several species considered an explosion waiting to happen. His homeworld maintained gravity at 1.0 standard, 40% higher than what the Council deemed safe for long-term habitation. And then there was the final detail highlighted in red across every screen: Earth's classification. Class 12 Deathworld. There were only 43 such worlds in the entire cataloged galaxy. 17 of them were designated as permanent quarantine zones, considered too dangerous for any civilized contact. Earth fell into the remaining 26 worlds that technically could support life, but only the most extreme and horrifying forms of it. Counselor Threen's translator produced a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. You carry 40 trillion organisms inside your body? You're a walking plague. James kept his hands raised, his expression patient. Those microorganisms are my microbiome, counselor. They're not harmful, they're essential. They help me digest food, produce vitamins, and protect me from actually dangerous bacteria. Every human has them. We would die without them. The Vrelnian delegate emerged slightly from its shell, eye stalks extending cautiously. And the acid the scanners detected? You carry acid inside your body? That's my stomach acid, yes. It helps break down the food I eat. It's safely contained within my digestive system. It never leaves my body under normal circumstances. Another delegate spoke up, voice trembling through translation. The temperature reading, 37 degrees, that's the heat signature of a thermal event. How are you not burning? That's normal body temperature for a human, James explained calmly. We're endothermic. We generate our own heat internally to maintain consistent conditions regardless of external temperature. It's how we survive on Earth. Chairman Veldas processed the incoming data, his pod's exterior panels shifting colors as he accessed the galactic database. Your species evolved on a Class 12 death world. Your planet experiences temperature ranges from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius. Your gravity would crush most species within hours. Your atmosphere would cause catastrophic cellular damage to the majority of civilized life. Your world hosts predators that employ pack hunting tactics, neurotoxin injection, and pure muscular crushing force. The chairman paused, and when he spoke again, there was something new in his synthetic voice, something that might have been horrified curiosity. Ambassador Walker, how does any species evolve sentience under such impossible conditions? What could possibly prepare a species for that level of constant threat? James met what he assumed was the chairman's gaze through the pod sensors. His expression remained calm, but there was something ancient in his eyes, something that translated across species and evolutionary paths. Something that made even the security drones pause in their hovering. We survived those conditions, Chairman, because we became the thing other creatures feared, James said quietly. On Earth we were the apex predators. The words fell into absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the environmental processors seemed to quiet. Chairman Veldas made a decision. Security, escort the human to Isolation Chamber 7 immediately. Maintain a minimum distance of 10 meters at all times. Use force fields only, no physical contact. We will reconvene in emergency session to discuss this unprecedented situation. As the drones guided him toward the exit, James walked with measured, careful steps. He passed by the assembled delegates and each one leaned away from him. Some activated personal shield generators. Others sealed their environmental suits tighter. A few simply retreated to the furthest corners of their designated areas. Behind him, the chamber erupted into chaos. 14 species all attempted to speak simultaneously. Alarms continued blaring. Security protocols flashed red across every available screen. James Walker had been inside the Galactic Council chambers for exactly 10 seconds before security was called. It was, he reflected as the isolation chamber door sealed behind him, quite possibly the most memorable diplomatic introduction in galactic history. And it was only the beginning. James sat in Isolation Chamber 7, separated from the Council by 3 layers of reinforced transparent barriers and 2 separate force field systems. Through the walls, he could see the delegates gathered in heated discussion. Their translators created a symphony of beeps, chimes, clicks, and musical tones that somehow conveyed universal panic. He waited patiently. Earth had prepared him for this possibility. First contact with truly alien species was never going to be simple, especially when you came from a planet most of the galaxy considered a nightmare. After 2 hours, Chairman Veldaz's voice crackled through the communication system. Ambassador Walker, the Council has completed its review of Earth's planetary classification and your species' biological requirements. We find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. I understand, Chairman, James replied calmly. I'm willing to answer any questions that might ease concerns. The concerns, Ambassador, are substantial. The Chairman's synthetic voice somehow managed to convey stress. Your body temperature alone represents a contamination risk. Your strength and our standard gravity, our calculations suggest you could accidentally injure someone with a casual touch. Your atmospheric needs conflict with 6 species present. And your planet's classification places you among the most dangerous life forms known to science. Counselor Threen's chiming voice joined the conversation. You ask us to simply accept this? To allow a predator species into our civilization? How can we trust that your violent nature won't surface? James considered his words carefully. What would help you trust us? What could humanity do to prove we can coexist peacefully with other species? There was silence as the council conferred privately. Then the Vrelnian delegate spoke, its voice emerging through translation as cautious but curious. Our diplomatic corps undergoes trials before receiving full credentials. Physical and mental tests designed to prove adaptability and resilience. If you truly believe humans can integrate into galactic civilization, prove it. Undergo our standard trials. James stood, moving slowly so the motion wouldn't alarm anyone. I accept your challenge. When do we begin? The trial started immediately. They placed James in the first environmental chamber, a high radiation zone that most species needed 3 weeks of gradual exposure to tolerate. Warning signs covered the entrance in 14 different languages. Inside, radiation levels matched those found near damaged reactor cores. James entered without hesitation. The observers watched their sensors carefully, expecting rapid cellular damage. Instead, James stood in the center of the chamber looking mildly uncomfortable, like someone standing in bright sunlight on a hot day. After the required hour, he emerged showing no signs of distress. On Earth, he explained to the stunned observers, our sun produces substantial radiation. Our atmosphere blocks most of it, but we evolved with constant exposure to background radiation. This level is higher than we normally experience, but not beyond our tolerance. The second chamber contained a low oxygen environment, only 7% oxygen compared to Earth's 21%. Most species considered 7% optimal. They expected the human to struggle, perhaps collapse. James breathed deeply a few times, then shrugged. Feels like being at high altitude back home. We have mountains where the air is this thin. People climb them for recreation. For the third test, they increased gravity to 1.3 standard, 30% higher than Earth's already excessive gravity. Surely this would incapacitate the human. James dropped to the floor. The observers leaned forward, thinking he had fallen. Then he started doing push-ups. 10, 20, 30. He stood up, barely breathing hard. Just keeping my muscles active while I wait out the timer. The fourth chamber was freezing, temperatures that would kill most species within minutes. James asked if they had something called coffee. When they explained they didn't, he simply waited out the hour, mentioning it reminded him of winter back home. The final environmental chamber was extremely hot, temperatures that approached the upper limits of what most civilized species could imagine surviving. James loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and commented that it felt like summer in a place called Arizona. 5 environmental extremes that took most species weeks of careful preparation. James adapted to all of them in minutes. But the council wasn't finished. Counselor Threen proposed a second trial, a threat assessment. They would see how the human handled actual danger. They brought James to an arena, a reinforced chamber designed for testing security equipment. Then they released a Creche. The Creche was a predator from a Class 4 world, not as extreme as Earth, but still dangerous by galactic standards. It massed 150 kilograms, stood nearly 2 meters tall, and was covered in natural bone plating. Its claws could slice through standard armor. It had killed 3 trained warriors in previous encounters. The betting pools among the security staff gave James 30 seconds before serious injury. The Creche charged immediately, recognizing prey. James didn't run. He shifted his stance, weight balanced, hands raised in a posture the observers didn't recognize. When the Creche lunged, James moved with surprising speed, redirecting the creature's momentum rather than meeting it head-on. What followed looked almost like a carefully choreographed dance. The Creche attacked with claws and teeth. James evaded, blocked, and controlled the creature's movements with precise technique. He never struck to kill or seriously injure. Instead, he maneuvered the creche into increasingly disadvantageous positions. 2 minutes into the encounter, James had the creche immobilized. His arm wrapped around its thick neck, his legs controlling its body, his position leveraging his weight to make escape impossible. The creche struggled, then went still, recognizing submission. James held the position for 10 more seconds, establishing dominance, then carefully released the creature. The creche scrambled away, confused but unharmed. James turned to face the observation window, breathing heavily but controlled. On Earth, we developed hundreds of fighting systems over thousands of years. What you just saw is called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's designed to control opponents without necessarily hurting them. We have much more aggressive styles, but I thought this would be more appropriate. The silence from the observation room was absolute. Finally, Chairman Velthus spoke. You subdued it? A creature that has killed trained warriors. And you did it without weapons, without serious injury to either party. Yes, Chairman. How many of these fighting systems does your species possess? James considered. Hundreds of distinct styles, each developed in different regions of Earth. Some focus on strikes, some on grappling, some on weapons. We've been fighting for survival for our entire evolutionary history. We got very good at it. The council convened again, this time for 6 hours. James waited patiently, drinking water and resting in a holding area. He could see them arguing, gesturing, their translators working overtime. When they finally called him back, Chairman Velthus delivered their verdict. The council has reached a decision. Humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. However, strict protocols will apply. Humans must wear biohazard indicators. No more than 5 humans may be present on any council station. Human vessels must maintain safe distances from civilian traffic. And Earth will remain under protective observation. James bowed slightly, another human gesture they would need to learn. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we accept these terms. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. We won't disappoint you. As he left the chamber, the Vrelnian delegate approached cautiously. Ambassador Walker, that creature you subdued, it killed 3 of our best security officers. James's expression softened. I'm sorry for your losses. On Earth, we learned that survival isn't just about being strong or fast. It's about technique, intelligence, and knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. We're dangerous, yes. But we choose how to use that danger. The Vrelnian's eye stalks trembled slightly. Your world must be terrifying. It made us who we are, James replied gently. And we're here to prove that survivors from death worlds can be more than just predators. We can be protectors too. 3 months passed like water flowing downstream. Station Zenith, 7 transformed in small ways that nobody had expected. James Walker became a familiar presence in the council chambers, no longer the terrifying anomaly but simply the human ambassador who brought strange beverages and told stories about his impossible planet. He shared something called coffee with curious delegates, despite their computers classifying caffeine as a mild toxin. He taught basic self-defense techniques to security personnel who wanted to learn. He explained Earth customs, answered endless questions about Death World survival, and slowly proved that humans could exist peacefully among other species. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it mellowed into cautious acceptance. James was careful, always aware of his strength in the low gravity, always conscious of his body temperature when near cold-blooded species. He made it work. Then came the day everything changed. It was a routine council session. Delegates discussed water rights for a developing colony world. Chairman Velthus was mediating a minor dispute between 2 species over fishing territories. James sat in Earth's designated section, reviewing reports on his data pad. The alarms began without warning. Red lights flooded the chamber. A harsh klaxon sound made several delegates cover their auditory organs in pain. Emergency protocols activated automatically, sealing doors and activating defensive shields. Chairman Velthus's voice cut through the chaos, emerging from speakers throughout the station. Perimeter breach detected. Krellian vessel has penetrated our defensive grid. All delegates proceed immediately to secure locations. This is not a drill. The Krellians were raiders, pirates who had rejected galactic civilization decades ago. They lived by taking what others built, specializing in hostage situations because they knew the council would never risk civilian casualties. They were brutal, efficient, and completely without honor. Before security teams could respond, 20 figures materialized directly inside the council chamber. Transport technology had beamed them through the shields. Someone had given them the codes. An inside job carefully planned. The Krellian raiders wore combat armor covered in scars and trophies from previous raids. They carried energy weapons that hummed with lethal charge. Their leader stood nearly 3 meters tall, a massive creature whose species evolved for strength and aggression. "Nobody moves," the leader's translator barked. "We want the treasury access codes. Give them to us and you live. Resist and we start executing delegates one at a time." The 12 security drones stationed in the chamber had been disabled by the transport scrambler. 40 unarmed delegates faced 20 armed raiders. The mathematics of the situation were brutally simple. Chairman Veldaz began the surrender protocols. There was no choice. Lives mattered more than money. Then James Walker stood up. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. He moved slowly, deliberately, stepping out from Earth's section and into the open floor. "Chairman," James said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, "with respect, I suggest you let me handle this." The Krellian leader's attention snapped to the human. Its translator processed the words and the creature's laugh echoed through the chamber, a sound that translated universally as mocking cruelty. "A human," it said with genuine amusement. "I heard Earth sent a Deathworlder to the Council. Look at you, so small without your weapons. What do you think you can possibly do against 20 armed warriors?" James didn't respond with words. He simply moved. What happened next would be analyzed frame by frame in security footage for years afterward. Even in slow motion it was difficult to track every movement. James crossed the distance to the nearest raider in 3 strides, moving faster than most species could follow in the low gravity. His hand struck the raider's weapon arm at a precise point, nerve clusters that made the limb go instantly numb. The weapon clattered to the floor. James caught it before it hit the ground. He fired 3 times in rapid succession, dropping raiders before they could react. The shots weren't lethal. He'd instantly adjusted the weapon setting to stun, but they were effective. A raider to his left swung a metal club. James ducked under the blow, swept the creature's legs, and used its own momentum to send it crashing into 2 others. He threw a chair. In 0.7 gravity, the furniture sailed across the chamber like a missile, striking another raider in the chest and knocking it backward. The Krellian leader roared and charged, abandoning its weapon for close combat. It was a mistake. James sidestepped at the last possible second, grabbed the creature's arm, and used a technique that looked impossible. He actually threw the massive raider over his shoulder using leverage and the creature's own charging momentum. The raider crashed into a control panel with enough force to crack the armored casing. James moved through the remaining raiders like a force of nature. Every movement had purpose, precision, and devastating effectiveness. He struck nerve clusters, disabled joints, used pressure points that worked across multiple species' anatomies. He took hits too. Energy blasts grazed his shoulder, a blade cut across his ribs, fists and claws struck his body. But he didn't stop. His species had evolved on a world where stopping meant death. Pain was information, not a reason to quit. His body released chemicals, adrenaline, endorphins, that let him push through damage that would incapacitate most civilized species. One raider managed to grab him from behind in a crushing hold. James dropped his weight, slipped partially free and struck backward with his elbow. The impact broke the raider's grip. James spun and delivered a precise strike to the creature's head that left it unconscious but alive. 2 minutes and 40 seconds after James stood up, Galactic security forces breached the chamber doors. They found all 20 Krellian raiders unconscious or incapacitated. James stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, his diplomatic suit torn and stained with blood, blue, green, and red mixing together. His own blood dripped from cuts on his arms and side. "I apologize for the mess, Chairman," James said, his voice steady despite obvious pain. "I'll file a complete report on the incident." Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. The medical bay erupted into organized chaos 6 minutes later when they brought James in. 3 different doctors from 3 different species stood around his bed, their expressions universally shocked. 17 separate injuries, one doctor reported, checking displays that showed human physiology. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, severe tissue damage. His body released massive quantities of stress hormones that allowed him to continue fighting despite injuries that should have rendered him unconscious. "Will he survive?" Chairman Veldaz asked from his mobile pod. "Yes, surprisingly. His species has remarkable healing capabilities. But Chairman, you need to understand what we witnessed. This human sustained catastrophic damage and continued fighting at peak efficiency for nearly 3 minutes. His pain tolerance, his resilience, his capacity for controlled violence, it's beyond anything in our medical databases." James woke 8 hours later. The first thing he saw was Chairman Veldaz beside his bed. The delegates? James asked immediately. All safe thanks to you, Veldaz replied. Ambassador Walker, you saved 40 lives today. The council is reconvening to discuss what this means. James closed his eyes. I'm sorry you had to see that side of humanity. I know it was frightening. Frightening, Veldaz agreed. But also, unnecessary. Perhaps we've been thinking about Deathworlders incorrectly. Maybe species from harsh worlds aren't just dangerous. Maybe they're exactly what civilization needs when danger comes calling. Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was already talking. Footage of a single unarmed human defeating 20 armed raiders spread across civilized space within hours. Some species became more afraid of humanity. Others became very interested in having humans as allies. The council chambers had been repaired, but everyone who entered could still feel the ghost of violence hanging in the air. Fresh panels covered the damaged walls. New control systems replaced the ones destroyed in the fight. But the memory remained, vivid and unsettling. Chairman Veldaz called for an unprecedented full session. Every council member had to attend personally, no remote participation, no proxy representatives. The question before them was simple but profound. What should they do about humanity? James sat in the observation section, his ribs still wrapped in medical gel that accelerated bone healing. He wore a fresh diplomatic suit, perfectly pressed, trying to look professional despite the pain that came with every breath. The Vrelnian delegate had specifically requested his presence for the proceedings. Councillor Threen spoke first, rising from its section with obvious agitation. We granted humans provisional membership based on the assumption they could control their violent nature. 3 days ago, we watched Ambassador Walker single-handedly defeat 20 armed raiders. He moved with speed our cameras could barely track. He fought through injuries that would kill most of us. This proves humans cannot control what they are. I move for immediate expulsion and permanent quarantine of Earth. Murmurs rippled through various sections of the chamber. Some delegates nodded their agreement, whatever that gesture meant for their species. The Shadari representative pulsed with agitated colors, its crystalline form shifting between red and orange. Ambassador Walker acted in defense of this council. 20 armed hostiles attacked us. 1 unarmed human protected us. Should we punish him for saving our lives? The issue isn't protection, another delegate argued, a small creature whose name James hadn't yet mastered pronouncing. The issue is capacity. If 1 human can defeat 20 trained raiders, what happens when humans decide we're the enemy? What happens when they turn that violence against us? The debate continued for hours. Some delegates spoke in favor of humanity, citing James's careful control and his choice to incapacitate rather than kill. Others argued that such capacity for violence could never be truly safe, regardless of current intentions. James listened to them discuss his species like scientists examining a dangerous specimen. He understood their fear. He'd felt it himself sometimes, reading Earth's history, seeing what humans did to each other before they learned better. Finally, Chairman Veldaz raised his primary appendage for silence. Ambassador Walker, you have the floor. The council will hear your defense. James stood slowly, feeling every bruise and healing fracture. He walked to the central platform, aware that hundreds of eyes watched his every movement. Some delegates leaned away as he passed. Others watched with curiosity or sympathy. Esteemed council members, he began, keeping his voice gentle despite the way it naturally carried in the chamber. I understand your fear. I truly do. You look at me and see something dangerous, something that walked into your civilization from a world you consider a nightmare. You're not wrong to be concerned. He paused, meeting various gazes around the chamber. Humans are dangerous. Earth made us that way. Every single day on my planet is a fight for survival in ways most of you can't imagine. We evolved surrounded by predators, natural disasters, diseases, and challenges that would destroy most species. Our entire history is written in struggle and blood. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But that same history taught us something crucial, James continued, his voice carrying quiet conviction. We learned that survival isn't just about being the strongest or the most violent. We learned that the species who survive longest are the ones who protect each other, who cooperate, who choose when to fight and when to show mercy. He gestured to his bandaged ribs. 3 days ago I could have killed those raiders. My training includes lethal techniques. Humans have developed hundreds of ways to kill efficiently. But I didn't use them. I neutralized threats and then I stopped. Because that's what civilized beings do. We choose restraint even when violence would be easier. The Vrelnian delegate rose from its section, eye stalks extended fully. "Council members, I must speak. During the attack, Ambassador Walker shielded me with his own body. A raider's weapon was aimed at my shell. The human put himself between us without any hesitation. He took a blow meant for me. He absorbed injury to protect someone from another species. He did the same for me," the Shadari added, its colors shifting to calmer blues. "When the lead raider attempted to execute me as an example, Ambassador Walker intervened at great personal risk. He prioritized my survival over his own safety." Chairman Veldas accessed his records, data flowing through his consciousness. 7 different delegates report similar experiences. Ambassador Walker sustained injuries protecting council members. He prioritized our safety above his own survival. "That doesn't change what he is," Councillor Threen insisted, though its voice held less certainty than before. "Today he protected us. Tomorrow who can say? How can we trust a Deathworlder?" James turned to face Threen directly. "You're asking if you can trust us. That's the real question here, isn't it? Not whether we're dangerous, we've already proven we are. The question is whether we'll use that danger to protect or to harm." The chamber fell silent. "I can't promise humans will never make mistakes," James said quietly. "We're not perfect. We carry violence in our DNA because our world demanded it for survival. But we also carry compassion, honor, sacrifice, and a deep belief that strength exists to protect those who need protecting, not to dominate them." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. "Every species here evolved to fit your environment. You evolved for cooperation and peace because your worlds were gentle enough to allow it. We evolved for survival because our world gave us no choice. That doesn't make us monsters. It makes us different. And maybe that difference is exactly what this council needs when danger comes calling." Chairman Veldas called for the formal vote. The chamber fell silent as each delegate registered their decision through their terminals. Green lights appeared on the main display, approval for humanity's continued membership. Red lights appeared, denial and expulsion. The board filled slowly. Green, red, green, green, red, red, green, green. The final count appeared, 9 green, 5 red. Humanity's full membership was approved. But Veldas wasn't finished. "I propose an amendment. Earth should become the headquarters for Council security operations. When civilization faces threats beyond our capability to handle, we call on those who evolved to handle threats." All in favor? More voting. This time 11 green, 3 red. The amendment passed. James felt something tighten in his chest, not pain from injuries but emotion. "Chairman, council members. Earth accepts this responsibility. We won't let you down." As the session ended, delegates approached James. Some remained distant, still uncertain. But others extended limbs, manipulators, crystalline structures, each species' version of respect and gratitude. The Vrelnian came last, eye stalks trembling slightly. "Thank you for protecting me, Ambassador Walker. I misjudged your species badly. I thought Deathworlders were only capable of destruction." James smiled gently. "Fear of the unknown is natural, my friend. I'm just grateful we have the chance to prove we're more than our capacity for violence. We're defined by our choices, not our capabilities." That night, the first official message was transmitted to Earth. Humanity had been accepted not despite being Deathworlders, but because they chose to use their strength for protection rather than conquest. The galaxy was learning that the most dangerous species could also be the most valuable allies. 3 years passed like seasons changing on Earth. Station Zenith, 7 transformed in ways nobody had predicted when James Walker first walked through those doors and terrified everyone within 10 seconds. The changes were everywhere. Gravity in common areas had increased to 0.85 standard because multiple species discovered they felt stronger training in higher gravity. Temperature zones accommodated wider ranges. Small cafes appeared serving coffee, and despite every computer classifying caffeine as a toxin, delegates from 6 different species had become quietly addicted to the bitter earth beverage. And there were humans everywhere now. Not many, the strict limits had relaxed to 20 per station after proving humans could coexist peacefully, but their presence changed everything. Human security officers trained council forces in hand-to-hand combat techniques. Human engineers redesigned safety protocols with Deathworld thinking. Human diplomats helped bridge cultural gaps with an ease that came from a species that had unified hundreds of different cultures on a single dangerous planet. Ambassador James Walker walked through the council chambers wearing dual insignia now, Earth's representative and director of galactic security. Young officers from a dozen different species straightened when he passed, offering the salute that humans had introduced to military protocol. Director Walker, a Vrelnian security officer, called out, its eye stalks perked with enthusiasm. Third platoon completed the endurance course in record time today. Outstanding work, Lieutenant, James replied warmly. Tell them I'm proud of their progress. The Vrelnian practically glowed with pleasure. 3 years ago, its species had feared humans with primal terror. Now they trained alongside them, learned from them, considered them friends and allies. Chairman Veldaz emerged from his transport pod, environmental systems humming. James, might I have a moment of your time? They walked together to the observation deck, looking out at the endless stars beyond the station's hull. Ships moved in the distance, human vessels flying alongside council craft in joint patrols, a sight that would have seemed impossible 4 years earlier. Do you ever regret how you entered the council? Veldaz asked, his translator rendering genuine curiosity. That dramatic first impression when security was called within 10 seconds? James laughed quietly. It wasn't exactly standard diplomatic procedure. But I walked in, alarms went off, drones surrounded me and everyone panicked. Not my finest moment. And yet here we are, Veldaz observed. The council is stronger than it has been in centuries. Our security forces are the most capable in recorded history. Member species feel safer than they have in my lifetime. All because we took a chance on a species from a death world. You took a chance on more than that, James corrected gently. You looked past fear and saw potential. That took real courage, Chairman. Veldaz's environmental pod hummed with what might have been the equivalent of a thoughtful sigh. We have a situation developing, James. I need your expertise on something concerning. James felt his instincts sharpen, the same instincts that had kept his ancestors alive on Earth's dangerous surface. What's wrong? Deep space sensors detected anomalous readings in the outer reach. Ancient technology, possibly military in nature. Our science teams are analyzing the data, but preliminary results are troubling. Something is waking up out there, James. Something very old. How serious are we talking? The technology predates the Council by millions of years. Whatever civilization built it may have been the galaxy's previous apex predators. The science team is genuinely frightened, and these are people who don't scare easily. James felt the familiar tightening in his gut that meant danger approaching. So you need someone from a death world to investigate. I need the best people we have, Veldaz corrected. And that includes humans who understand how to face the unknown. Assemble your team. Earth's fleet is authorized to deploy in full support. We're sending our protectors to face whatever this is. The deployment bay buzzed with organized activity 2 hours later. James stood before his assembled team, humans and aliens working together, the best of Council security forces. Lieutenant William Price stood at attention, former Earth Special Forces, now training alien species in combat tactics. Commander Sarah Blake checked equipment with practiced efficiency, her tactical mind already running scenarios. The Vrelnian officer who had trained with them for 2 years stood proudly. A Shadari combat engineer, its crystalline form pulsing steady blue. A Pacifin intelligence analyst, its multiple limbs working several data pads simultaneously. Listen up, James addressed them, his voice carrying the authority of experience. We're heading into unknown territory to investigate a potential threat. This might be nothing. This might be everything. Either way, we do this smart, we stay careful, and we all come home. Understood. Sir, yes, sir. The response came in multiple languages but spoke with one unified voice. Sarah fell into step beside James as they boarded the transport ship. Think there's really something dangerous out there? James looked at the stars visible through the bay's atmospheric shield. The galaxy is bigger than we ever imagined and we've barely explored a fraction of it. Earth taught us that assuming safety is how you die. Better to be prepared for anything. Earth also taught us that the scariest predators are the ones smart enough to work together, Sarah added with a slight smile. James nodded. Exactly. Whatever's out there, it's about to learn that this galaxy has new apex predators. And we don't hunt for sport. We protect. The fleet moved through space hours later, human vessels flying in formation with Council ships, a symbol of cooperation that represented everything the galaxy had become. Inside the command ship, James reviewed sensor data with growing concern. The anomaly was massive. Technology on a scale that made Council engineering look primitive. And it was definitely activating, waking from millions of years of dormancy. His communicator chimed urgently. Director Walker, we're receiving a transmission from the anomaly. It's specifically addressed to you. Every instinct James possessed screamed warning. Put it through. The voice that emerged was ancient, artificial, and utterly cold. Biological entities detected. Analyzing, gravitational origin .0 standard. Thermal signatures elevated. Classification, Deathworld species. Fascinating. This galaxy has finally evolved something potentially worthy of our attention. James kept his voice steady and professional. This is Ambassador James Walker of Earth and the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and state your intentions. We are the Remnant. We ruled this galaxy before your primitive species crawled from whatever ocean spawned you. We seeded worlds, tested evolutionary paths, created the conditions for life itself. After millions of years dormant, we wake to find our garden tended by Deathworlders. How unexpectedly interesting. The transmission ended abruptly. James looked at his assembled team, humans and aliens alike, all watching him with a mixture of fear and trust. They had trained together, bled together, learned to see past species differences to the people underneath. Well, he said calmly, I guess the galaxy just got significantly more complicated. Sarah raised an eyebrow. What's the plan, Director? James smiled, the expression that had once terrified the council but now reassured them. Same plan as always. We talk first. We learn everything we can. We try diplomacy, cooperation, and understanding. And if this remnant proves hostile to the civilized species we've sworn to protect. He looked out at the combined fleet, at the unified strength of Earth and the Galactic Council working together. Then they're about to learn that humanity didn't become apex predators by accident. And the Council didn't choose us as protectors for decoration. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Deathworlders and civilized species united. Lieutenant Price checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. 4 years ago, they called security on you within 10 seconds of entering the Council. They did, James agreed. But I'm still here. The Council is still here. And together we've built something worth protecting. The fleet moved forward into unknown space, toward ancient mysteries and potential threats. Behind them, Station Zenith, 7 watched and waited. Chairman Vel thus transmitted one final message to James, bring our people home, old friend. James sent a simple reply, always. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, full of dangers the galaxy had forgotten. But they also held possibilities nobody had imagined when one human walked into the Galactic Council and changed everything. Humanity had proven that Deathworlders could be protectors. Now they would prove it again.